Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to crochet Daphne the Donut. This donut's sugary blaze isn't just sweet on the tongue, it's sweet on the soul, making every thank you stick and every smile last longer. This pattern, like all of the Kindness Company patterns, is a quick crochet, making it perfect for spreading crochet kindness. Daphne can be made in sport, DK, or bulky weight yarn by adjusting your hook size. Today, I'll be crocheting in worsted weight yarn and a 4mm crochet hook. If you haven't already, be sure to pick up the matching magical crochet greeting card to make an adorable gift that your friends and family will absolutely love. All right, let's go ahead and get started.
Alright, so for today's tutorial we're going to be working on Daphne the Donut, and we're going to begin with this brown yarn and by tying a slip knot and chaining. So let's review how to tie a slip knot and how to form a chain. Alright, so let's review how to start with a slip knot and chains. So the way I like to tie my slip knots is I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to take the tail part and about 5 inches or so of that tail part, and I'm going to fold it behind the working yarn. I also like to pinch my fingers inside of that loop, so I'll put my index in middle, or I can wrap my pinky and my really whatever fingers you want to wrap inside. So once you've crossed that behind and then you've made a little bit of a loop, we're going to fold that tail over and wedge it in between some of those fingers we have inside of the loop. Then when we've done that, our goal is to pull this strand through without pulling all of the tail through as well, because that's just going to tie a regular knot. We're going to use this loop we formed to sort of pinch the tail into a loop that we can tighten or loosen as we need. So to do that, I'm going to grab both the working yarn and that tail, and then I'm going to use my fingers to sort of pull that tail end through, and then by tightening both the working yarn and the tail and then pulling that loop, I form a slip knot. Now the reason I like to tie them this way is because they tighten whenever you pull the tail, but they don't tighten whenever you pull the working yarn. So that way whenever you start tensioning, it's not going to pull your loop really tightly closed. And then when we weave this tail in, it secures that first stitch. It also allows us to tighten that stitch too, so if we add a lot of stitches to this slip knot that we've tied, we have the ability to tighten it after the fact. So let's practice that one last time, so we can just pull that slip knot out. And again, we're going to take about 5 inches or so of our tail, and we're going to wrap it behind our working yarn, and bring it and wedge it in between our fingers that are inside that loop we've made. And then by pulling that working yarn and that loop through, can tie our slip knot. Once we've got it tied, then we're ready to go ahead and begin chaining. So we can grab our crochet hook, put it inside of that slip knot we've tied, and then by tugging the tail, we can tighten it down on our hook. Then we're ready to start chaining however many stitches we need to chain for our pattern. So to chain, it's a lot like a slip stitch. We're just going to take our working yarn and yarn over and pull it straight through and up. And the goal when we chain is to make these loops all the same size. So try not to make them too tight, but also try not to pull them up too long or you'll have a really loose chain. Alright, that's how we'll start when we tie a slip knot and chain. Alright, so now that we have our slip knot tied, we're ready to start in on round 1. And if you look at the top left-hand corner, you'll see the instructions for round 1. I'm going to keep the instructions up there for each round. It'll kind of track with us as we go, just so we have our instructions easy to see. Alright, so for round 1, we need to begin by chaining 24 stitches. So remember to chain. We're going to take our hook and we're going to yarn over, meaning we're going to put the yarn over our hook and then draw the yarn through our slip knot to form our first chain. So we'll keep doing that until we have 24 chains total. Alright, I have all 24 of my chains formed, and we need to slip stitch to the first chain that we made, and we need to be careful not to twist our chain as we do that. So I like to hold my chain so it's flat and I can see all of the stitches of the chain, and then I bring the two ends together and insert my hook into that slip knot that we tied, that first chain stitch. And then once I've done that, I'm ready to make a slip stitch. So now that my hook's inserted into that first chain, I'm just going to yarn over and draw through both loops on my hook. And that joins our 24 single crochet stitches. So to end this round, we're going to chain 1. And then I'm going to use a stitch marker to mark this chain 1. Alright, I've got that chain 1 formed, and I'm ready to start in on round 2, where all we need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 24 chains that we made. So to make our first single crochet stitch here in this chain, we're going to go through the loops here, and we're going to yarn under and draw up a nice tall loop, and then yarn over and draw through 2. That forms our first single crochet stitch. So we're going to go ahead and continue adding single crochet stitches in the same way, going through each of the little V's from the chains that we formed until we're all the way around. Alright, so I have made my first 24 stitches here in this round, and I'm ready to end by slip stitching to that first chain stitch that I made, the one that we marked, and then I'm going to chain 1 and then mark that chain 1, which sets me up for round 3. Alright, so we're ready for round 3, where we're going to learn a new kind of skill. So if you look at the top left hand corner, you'll see we've got some parentheses, and let's go ahead and start with what we already know, which is to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of our round. And then the next part of our parentheses tells us we need to do 1 INC, and an INC is to increase. So to do that, we're going to go into our next stitch, and we'll place 1 single crochet stitch. And then to finish our increase, we're going to go through that same stitch again and place a second single crochet stitch. So 2 single crochet stitches in the same stitch from the previous round. So that's everything inside the parentheses once. If you look outside, we have a multiplication sign and the number 8. That means we need to repeat everything inside in the order it appears 7 more times for a total of 8 repetitions. So that's 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round, another single crochet stitch in the next stitch, so 2, and then an increase. So we'll keep repeating that pattern until we get to the end of this round. Alright, I am all the way around. I'm ready to slip stitch to that first chain stitch that I made at the end of the last round. And then I'll chain 1 and remark that chain. And that sets us up for round 4, where we've got another parentheses pattern, which is to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. and then an increase. And then just like before, we need to repeat that another 7 times for a total of 8 repetitions all the way around. Alright, I am all the way around. I'm going to slip stitch to that chain 1 that I have marked. And then chain 1. And I'm ready for round 5. We're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then I'm going to increase. And then I've got my next set of parentheses to repeat, which is to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches. And then follow that with an increase. And then I'm going to repeat that sequence 6 more times for a total of 7 repetitions, which will take us to the last 2 stitches of the round. Alright, I've made it to my last 2 stitches of the round. We're going to put 1 single crochet in each. And then I'll slip stitch to that chain that I have marked. And then chain 1. And that sets us up for round 6, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches. And then follow that with an increase. And then repeat that sequence another 7 times for a total of 8 repetitions all the way around. Alright, that wraps up round 6. I'm going to slip stitch to that first chain. And then chain 1. So for rounds 7 through 8, we're going to just put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around, and then just like we have been at the end of each round, slip stitching to that chain and then chaining 1. So I will see you back here whenever I have wrapped round 8. Alright, so I just made my last single crochet stitch here in round 8, and then in round 9 we're going to be working in a new color. So we need to switch colors for this slip stitch and chain 1. So let's do that first by getting our white yarn ready to go. And then I'm going to cut a tail with this brown yarn here. And then we're going to grab some of that white yarn that we've got ready to go. And we'll take our stitch marker out and push our hook through that chain 1. But then rather pulling through with this brown that we've already cut, we're going to grab the white. And I like to lay a little bit of a tail, I make it about the same length as the brown that I just cut, behind my work. And then take the working yarn, so the stuff that's still attached to the ball of yarn, wrap it around my hook, and then I'm going to draw through both the chain 1 that I pushed my hook through and then the only other loop on my hook with that white. So I'll just pull through both of those, which changes colors. Then I'm also going to tighten both the brown tail and the white tail, and I need to work them in for this first stitch here in round 9. So I bring them over to the left. And then I begin tensioning the white working yarn. And we're going to make that first chain 1 here in the white color. And then of course mark that chain 1. And then if you look here for round 9, we need to be working in the BLO, or the back loop only. So as we've been working, we've been going through both loops, the front loop here and the back loop. Now we need to be working through just the back loop of it. So sort of like pushing your hook through both sides. We're going to go just through the center of the stitch and grab just that back loop there. Then when we've done that, we're going to lay those tails, the brown and the white tail, over our hook as well. And then we can make a single crochet stitch as normal by yarning under and drawing both around the tails we laid on our hook and through the back loop that we went through. And then draw up a nice tall loop. Then yarn over and draw through both. So now that we've got these tails worked into this first stitch, I like to pull them a little bit, and then we're going to just keep them in the back of our work. They're worked in, and whenever we stuff our donut and sew it closed, they'll hide out inside. Alright, so for the remainder of round 9, we're just going to continue working in the back loop only, making one single crochet stitch in every back loop all the way around. Alright, so I have just made it all the way around round 9. I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch to that first white chain 1 that I made. And then make another chain 1 and mark that chain. Then for round 10, we're still in the back loop only, adding one single crochet stitch to every back loop all the way around. Alright, so that's round 10 done for me. I'm going to go ahead and join. And then chain 1. Then for round 11, we're going to put one single crochet stitch in both sides of the stitch, so front and back loop, all the way around. Alright, so I'm all the way around round 11. I'm ready to slip stitch here in this last chain 1, and then chain 1. Alright, and for round 12, we are going to start with another parentheses pattern, and let's begin with what we already know, which is to put one single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of the round. Alright, and the next thing inside of our parentheses is a DEC, or a decrease, where we're going to take the next 2 stitches from the previous round and then single crochet them together so that there's only 1 in this round. To do that, we're going to go through our next stitch, yarn under, and draw through that stitch. Then we're going to repeat that exact process in the next stitch. So go through, yarn under, and pull up a loop. And then we're going to yarn over, putting the yarn over our hook, and draw through the 3 remaining loops left on our hook. And you can see that takes 2 stitches from the previous round and draws them together into 1 stitch for this round. So we're going to repeat that process, 5 single crochet stitches and then a decrease, another 7 times for 8 repetitions until we're all the way around. Alright, that's the end of round 12 for me. I'll go ahead and join. For round 13, we're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of our round. Then we'll follow that with a decrease. And then we've got another parentheses pattern to repeat, which is to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. And follow that with a decrease. And then repeat that sequence another 6 times for a total of 7 repetitions, which will take us to the last 2 stitches of the round. Alright, I'm at my last 2 stitches of the round. I'll put 1 single crochet in each, and then join. And that wraps up round 13. So for round 14, we've got another parentheses pattern to repeat. We'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round, and then decrease. Then repeat that sequence 7 more times for a total of 8. Alright, that wraps up that round. I'll go ahead and join. And then we're ready for round 15, which is the last round of crochet here on the donut. So we'll begin by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round, and then decrease, and then repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, that wraps up round 15, so we'll go ahead and join just like we have been, but we're not going to chain 1. We're just going to slip stitch into that chain 1 from the beginning of the round. And we are ready to fasten off and do a little sewing. So we need to cut a rather long tail because we're going to be attaching this round that we just finished to the very first round. See how I flattened the donut out here? We're going to be sewing to this first round that we crocheted here in brown. So we'll need a long tail. I would cut 12 to 14 inches or so. And once you have, you can pull that last slip stitch that's on your hook. Just pull it long until your working yarn goes all the way through, and then give it a tug to tighten it. And then we're also going to want to make sure the tails from our color change and the tail from our slip knot are kind of inside of the donut. And then we'll fold them flat so that our last round and our first round kind of touch. And we'll take a yarn needle and the tail that we just cut and thread that tail through. And then we're going to just sew these stitches together by sewing through some of the white and then into one of the chain stitches from the brown. And then we're going to just come up through the center of the donut and sew back down through the next white stitch, whip stitching the inside of the donut together. So we'll just keep sewing around until both sides are sewn together, and we will stuff a little bit as we go. Alright, so I've sewn around about a third of the donut so far, and I'm going to start adding some stuffing because it'll be harder to stuff if I wait to the end. So let's grab a little pinch of stuffing and add it to the section that we've sewn together. Alright, so there's that section stuffed. I'm going to continue sewing and stuffing as I go until I am all the way around the donut. Alright, so I have sewn all the way around my donut, and I have stuffed as I've gone, so you can see our donut is fully stuffed and sewn together. So let's finish off by making sure our yarn is coming out through some of the white of the donut. And then we're going to tie a surface knot by looping that white over the top of our donut here. And then we're going to grab just a little bit of the fabric of the donut. So pick maybe just one stitch and then sew so that you're coming up through that loop that we've tied. And then as you pull, that loop's going to loop around our yarn and form a knot. And then we're going to send our yarn needle into the donut and then just out through any place in the white top of the donut. And we'll pull until that knot and the tail go inside. Then you can unthread your yarn needle from that white tail. And then using our scissors, we'll pull that tail tight and snip close to the fabric of our work, which weaves the tail in, and we can discard this white that we didn't end up using. Alright, so that is the donut portion complete. Alright, so next up, let's go ahead and get Daphne's face embroidered on. So I went ahead and threaded my embroidery needle, double threaded my embroidery needle here. And I'm going to tie a knot here at the very end. And I like to pinch the end of my embroidery floss to my needle and then wrap it counterclockwise 4 times or so. Slide all those wraps down the eye of my needle until I'm at the very end, which forms a knot. And then I'm going to trim the tail of that knot because we're going to be hiding this inside of the body of the donut. Alright, so now that I've got it threaded, I'm ready to go ahead and begin by sewing the first eye. And I'm going to be sewing the eyes here, sort of in between, let's see, rounds 15, 14, 13, between 13 and 12, kind of in this area here. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to send it through some of the spaces between stitches here, and then up into the stitch here of round 15, 14, 13, of round 12, towards the bottom. And then when I pull, it's going to pull that knot to the inside. So Daphne has rounded, happy eyes with a little bit of a flare here at the end. So to make that shape, we're going to first sew a long straight stitch, maybe 1.5 stitch over and slightly lower. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to send my needle up through about halfway of that stitch that I'm going to be sewing. So that sews a flat stitch, but we want it to be rounded. So I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to go underneath that long stitch I've sewed. And then I'm going to pull that stitch up towards the stitch that I've come up through here and sew down into that stitch as well. Then I'll take my needle and send it up through the corner of the eye so we can add the eyelash. And as I pull, it's going to cinch that more of a rounded shape. Then to add the flare of the eyelash here, I'm just going to sew half a stitch over. And then I'm going to send my needle over so that I can repeat that same process for the other eye. And you can see that forms the winged eyelash here in the corner. So let's repeat that on the other side here, sewing that long straight stitch, and then coming up through. Alright, so that's the other eye, and then I'm going to use this embroidery floss to also sew the mouth. So I'm going to come up a row lower than the eyes are placed. And then we're going to sew another long straight stitch and cinch it just like we did with the eyes, but just the other direction. So we're going to cinch it so it pulls down into the shape of a smile. So sew that stitch, and then don't pull it too tight because we need to cinch it still. We'll go underneath and then pull that stitch down and sew back down into the same stitch we came up through. And then I'm going to send my embroidery floss to the back of the donut here. You can see that forms the smile and the eyes. And then I'm going to tie a surface knot here. So loop the embroidery floss over the surface of the donut, grab a little fabric of the donut, and then up through that loop that I just tied. And then I'll sew into the donut and out through a random place, pulling tight to pull that knot to the inside. And then I'm going to trim. And you can see that is the face embroidered on. Alright, so next up we're going to be making the cheeks, and we need to make 2. I'm going to be using this light pink yarn to form them. So first thing we need to do is get a magic ring formed, so let's review how to tie one. Okay, so let's review how to tie a magic loop. So to start, we're going to get about 5 inches of our tail of our working yarn, and then we need to form a bit of a finger guns here with our left hand. And then we're going to lay that tail so that the tail part of it is down over the bottom digit of our left hand. And then we're going to take our thumb and pinch that tail so it's on securely to our index and our middle finger. Then we're going to take the working yarn, and that's the yarn that's attached to the ball of yarn, and we're going to wrap it around the back side of those 2 fingers really close to the top digit. So I'm just wrapping around the back, and then I'm going to continue by pulling it behind my thumb. So I just made a big loop around my fingers. Then we're going to wrap a second time, but this time we're going to go around the lower digit on the back side of our left hand. And then one last time we're going to push that working yarn behind our thumb on our left hand. Then when we've done that, we can take our crochet hook and we're going to flip our left hand over so we can see those two loops that we formed. And then taking our crochet hook underneath that top loop, we're going to use the hook to grab that bottom loop and pull it underneath the top loop. Then when we've done that, we're going to flip our hands back over away from our body. And then bring our hook and our left hand together. So you can see my fingers on my right hand are touching the back side of the hand with the loops on it. Then I'm going to take my right index finger and thumb and I'm going to grab those loops that are on the back side of my hand. So the one on the hook and the one on my hand. Once I've got those pinched rather securely, I'm going to let go with my thumb and then slide all of those loops very carefully off of my hand. Once I've done that, you can see I have my tail. Again, that's not attached to the ball of yarn. And then my working yarn. I'm going to move my tail out of my way, kind of just swing it around clockwise to the 12 o'clock position. And then I'm going to grab my working yarn and begin tensioning it by laying it over my left index finger and then grabbing the remaining yarn with my pinky and my ring finger. Then we need to be able to tension our yarn, so we're going to have to let go with our right hand. But before we do, we need to make sure we're pinching the loop that we've tied and our tail together. So if you look, I like to kind of pinch so that it sandwiches that working yarn. So I'm just going to pinch both that loop and that tail together here. And then when I've done that, I can let go with my right hand, and pulling my index finger up lets me tighten that loop on my hook. Then to lock our magic loop or magic ring in place, we can yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. And that locks everything in place. You can let go with your left hand. You can even stop tensioning if you want. This loop isn't going to go anywhere now that we've locked it in place. One last thing that I like to do before I get started is I'll take the tail. You can see it's sort of threaded through the loop that we've made. I like to take this tail and pull it out so that I can go ahead and get started placing single crochet inside. Before you begin, we also need to make sure we are working both in the loop and over the tail of the magic ring as well. Alright, so we are ready to make our first single crochet stitch. Alright, so now that we have our magic ring formed, we're ready to start round 1, which is actually the only round of the cheeks, and that's to put 5 single crochet stitches inside of this ring. So remember, when we're working the magic ring, we're going to be working in both this ring and then also over the tail that we used to tie it. So I hold the tail alongside the ring while I work. Then I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to go through the ring and under that tail, yarn under by putting the yarn under my hook and draw through, and then yarn over and draw through both loops on my hook. And that forms our first single crochet stitch. Let's make 4 more. Alright, when we have all 5 of our single crochet stitches formed, we can do the magic part of our magic ring and pull that tail tight. And then we're going to slip stitch to that first single crochet that we made. So we'll go through both sides of that stitch, front and back loop. Then yarn under, draw up a loop, and then draw that loop through. Then we can cut a tail. And I like to draw both the magic ring tail and the tail I just cut through that last stitch until they both come through, and then tighten them both down. Alright, that is one of the cheeks done. Let's make one more and then get them attached. Alright, so I have both of my cheeks done, and I'm going to be gluing mine on, but if you are choosing to sew, you'll want to use the tails here to sew them on. Since I'm gluing mine on, I'm going to weave these tails in. And the first thing I'm going to do is cut them so that the magic ring tail and the tail I made when I was crocheting are the same length. And discard anything I don't need. Then I'm going to weave those tails in together. So I'm going to just put them through the same eye of the same needle. And then I'll just snag a couple of stitches here at the back. And now that they're woven in, I can trim them close. I'll repeat on the other cheek. Alright, so I am ready to go ahead and paste these on. And I'll use some hot glue and I'm going to just attach them so that they are on the outsides of the eyes. Alright, those are the cheeks attached. Alright, next up we're going to make the ears. So we're going to be working with the same colored white that we used for the donut, and we need to begin by forming a magic ring. Alright, we're ready for round 1. We're going to start by putting 6 single crochet stitches inside of that magic ring. And we're going to mark that first stitch as well. Alright, I've pulled the tail to my magic ring and closed that first round up. I'm ready for round 2, where we've got a parentheses pattern to repeat. We're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then don't forget to mark that stitch as well. And then an increase in the next stitch. And then repeat that sequence 2 more times. Alright, that wraps up round 2. Then for round 3, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 3. Then we're ready for round 4, which is the last round of our ear here, where we'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then an increase. Then repeat that sequence 2 more times. Alright, and that is round 4 done. We're ready to fasten off, so we'll take our stitch marker out and then slip stitch to the stitch it was just in. Then we need to cut a medium length tail to sew with, so reserve yourself 6 to 8 inches or so, and then cut. Then we'll pull that last slip stitch all the way through until our yarn comes through, and then tighten down. And then I'm also going to take the magic ring tail and stuff it to the inside of the ear. When we attach the ears on, we're also going to be attaching them flat and not stuffing them. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the tail that I cut over to the right side of the ear, and then pinch it flat to close. And that is one ear done. Let's make one more and then get them attached. Alright, I have both ears made. I'm ready to get them attached. So I'm going to take the tail that I cut whenever I was done crocheting, thread it through the eye of my yarn needle here. And then I'm going to fold it flat like I mentioned when we were crocheting the ear. We're going to be sewing through both layers of fabric as we attach them to Daphne's head. So I'm going to attach my ear so that it's in line with the cheek and then also sits right where that front loop left behind in the white is. And I'll just sew into some of that white fabric of the donut. And then come back through both layers of fabric here at the corner. Then I'll repeat that, sewing through some more of the donut's fabric, and then through both layers of the ear until I am all the way across. Alright, once you've sewn all the way across, we are ready to tie a surface knot. And then weave this into the donut. Then we'll unthread our tapestry needle and cut that tail so that it's woven in. And we'll repeat on the other side with the other ear. Alright, that's both ears attached. Daphne's ears also have a blush detail, so let's add that here. So to add this blush detail, you can use red acrylic paint or colored pencils or face blush, just like you would use for your own makeup. I'm going to be using face blush, so I'm going to take a little dab and add it to the insides of the ears. Once you've added, you can then blend, and that wraps up the ears. Alright, so last up we need to make the icing, and we're going to be using this sort of bright pink for it. And we'll begin by tying a slip knot. And then we need to chain 11 stitches. Once you have all 11 stitches chained, we're going to start in the second chain from our hook. So remember, we don't count the one here on our hook. We're going to add an increase in that second chain. So there's my first single crochet and my second. Then we're going to place one single crochet stitch in the next 8 chains. Alright, there are my 8 single crochet stitches. Then we're going to place 3 single crochet stitches in the slip knot that we tied. It's going to kind of help us flip around the slip knot here. So here's my first and my second. And then as I work my third stitch, I'm going to kind of flip around the other side of this chain and place that third single crochet stitch on the other side of the slip knot here. Alright, so those 3 single crochet kind of help us turn to work down the other side of the chain. So we're going to place 9 single crochet stitches, one in each of the next 9 chain stitches on this side of the chain. Alright, there are my 9 single crochet stitches, and then I'm going to slip stitch that very first single crochet increase, the first one there that we made, and I'll chain 1 and then mark that chain 1 that I just made. And that's round 1 done. We're ready for round 2, where we're going to put 2 increases, one in the next 2 stitches of the round. So an increase here, and a second one here. Then we're going to place 8 single crochet stitches, one in each of the next 8 stitches. Alright, there are my 8 single crochet stitches. Then we're going to place 3 increases, one in the next 3 stitches, which should be the 3 stitches that we made to flip ourselves around the chain. So an increase here, here, and one more. So there's my last increase there. Then we'll make 8 single crochet stitches down this side, one in the next 8 stitches. And then we'll finish by increasing in the last stitch of the round. Then take your stitch marker out and slip stitch to that chain 1 to join. And then chain 1 and mark that chain. And that wraps up round 2. So for round 3, we're going to place 4 half double crochet increases, one in the next 4 stitches. So to make a half double crochet stitch, we're going to take our hook and we're going to wrap it around our yarn. So the yarn's just going to wrap around the hook. Then we'll take our hook and we're going to go through our first stitch. Then yarn under just like we would with a single crochet and draw through that stitch. And you should have 3 loops on your hook. Then we'll yarn over and draw through all 3 of those loops, which forms a half double crochet, but we need to make a half double crochet increase. So in that same stitch that we just made our first half double crochet, we need to make a second. So wrap our yarn around our hook, go through that same stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, then yarn over and draw through all 3. And that is 1 half double crochet increase completed. We need to make 4 total, so another 3. Alright, there are my 4 half double crochet increases. Then we're going to make 1 single crochet stitch in the next 9 stitches of the round. Alright, there are my 9 single crochet stitches. Then we're going to make 5 more half double crochet increases. So 1 half double crochet increase the next 5 stitches. Alright, there are my 5 half double crochet increases. Then we're going to make 1 single crochet stitch in the next 9 stitches. And then in the last stitch of the round, we're going to make 1 final half double crochet increase. Then we're ready to join by slip stitching to that chain 1. and then chaining 1. Alright, there's my last half double crochet increase. We're going to end this round by slip stitching. But we're not going to chain 1 this time to start round 4. We're going to chain 6 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then in the second chain from our hook, remember not counting the one on our hook itself, in the second chain, we're going to place 1 single crochet stitch. In the next stitch, we'll place another single crochet. Then we'll place 1 half double crochet stitch in the next 3 chains. Then we're going to skip this next stitch here from the previous round, and we're going to go into the stitch right after it and place 1 slip stitch. And then we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch as well. So that's 2 slip stitches. And we're going to repeat that same process again a second time. So we'll chain 6 stitches. In the second chain from our hook, we'll place 1 single crochet. Then a second single crochet in the next chain, and 3 half double crochet stitches. Skip the next stitch of our round and slip stitch in the next stitch, and then slip stitch in the stitch right after that. Then we're going to chain 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3. And in the second chain from the hook, we'll place 1 single crochet. In the next chain, the last one, we'll place 1 half double crochet. Then we'll skip the next stitch in the round and place 1 slip stitch in the stitch right after, and then slip stitch 1 more time in the next stitch. Then we're going to repeat that process another 3 times, so chain 3, 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the chain, 1 half double crochet in the last chain, skip the next stitch and slip stitch in the one after, and the stitch after that. So there's 2 repetitions of that. There's 3 repetitions. Let's do that one more time. Alright, so there's all 4 of the shorter frosting swoops. Then we're going to make some more of the longer ones that we made here at the very beginning. So we'll chain 6 this time. And that second chain from our hook will make a single crochet, a second single crochet in the next chain, and then 3 half double crochets, slip stitch in the second stitch here, and then slip stitch in the next. And we're going to make 2 of these total, so 2 of these longer swoops here. So we'll make a second one. Alright, so there are those 2 longer swoops. And then we're going to make 4 more of the shorter ones across this side. So that's chain 3, single crochet in the first, half double crochet in the second, then skip, and then 2 slip stitch. So there's the first. There's the second. Alright, and there's the last swoop that I need to make. So we're ready to go ahead and fasten off. And if you're sewing this on, leave a long tail. If you're pasting it, you don't need as much. I'm going to be pasting my icing on, so I'll leave a shorter tail. I'm going to pull that last slip stitch through and tighten down. And then I'm going to weave this tail in since I'm not going to be using it to attach. So I'll thread it through the eye of my tapestry needle, and I'll just sew it so that it's through the front and into the back, and then just into some of the stitches here on the back side of the icing. And then before we attach, we also can add some sprinkles to the icing here at this point. I'm going to be adding some lighter pink sprinkles, the same color as Daphne's cheeks. So I'll cut a little length of pink yarn here. And I'll just sew straight stitches, just in a random order. You can also use beads for these sprinkles if you'd like. And you can use multiple colors too for more of a rainbow sprinkle look. But you can see I'm just sewing pretty quickly, just some straight stitches here to form the sprinkles. And just like sprinkles kind of randomly lay on top of frosting, I'm sewing them sort of every which way, keeping them about the same length. So here's my last sprinkle. And I'm going to tie the 2 ends of my yarn together on the back side here. And since this is going to hide on the bottom of the donut, I can just trim these short. I don't need to weave them in. So you can see that it forms the sprinkles. And then we're going to attach this frosting to the bottom of Daphne. And then we'll paste so that the frosting sort of swoops up. The longer sides kind of over here on either side, and the shorter sides on the front and back. So I'm going to take some glue and I'm going to glue this main section on first. So I'm just going to set Daphne right on those glue blobs that I've added. And then I'll go and add a little bit to each of these swoops and then lay them down. Alright, and once you have the frosting pasted on or sewn on, Daphne the donut is done.